we're going to go into public session here. One of our first orders of business, of course, is the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight, we're joined by a young Boy Scout who's working on part of his badge system, his communications badge. Has a part of that requirement, needs to come and attend one of these meetings and witness the level of communication that we can exhibit at one of these meetings. We'd like to have Dale, Larry, come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody could rise for the pledge, please. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And everybody could remain standing for a moment of silence. We do this routinely as part of our meetings. Respect to the men and women who are serving us in uniform, both in this country and overseas. Thank you. Be seated. So Dale, just a little bit of information about the meeting you're attending. This is a meeting of the Charter Commission. We were elected to serve the community this past March, and the issue that we are looking at is whether or not there should be a change to the town charter to modify the method of voting on budgets and spending and things like that in town, for the town side of the government as opposed to the school side of the government. There are two sides of government, and you're at a town meeting. First order on our agenda is old business. There's a discussion from our last meeting on adoption of rules for the Charter Commission meetings. After we finish this discussion, we'll go into a public hearing. So this is a board-level discussion only. We had a motion, I don't believe it was seconded at our last meeting, that we should adopt Robert's Rules of Order. We had a attorney's opinion. The last meeting was actually somewhat led by an attorney, that we should not consider Robert's Rules of Order as being too extensive, and anybody who's familiar with that knows that it's a several hundred-page book, and we could tie ourselves up and handicap ourselves if we adopted that. So that was the attorney's advice. So we have that as a matter of discussion. I had looked for, what I thought I had was a briefer set of rules that had been published some time ago in history. So I did not find that briefer set. I went back and redid my internet searches looking for it again and did not find it. So we have a discussion to have up here at the council, or at the commission. See, I know I'm going to make that mistake a bunch of times over the next few months. So we have a brief discussion up here on how we want to conduct ourselves as a charter commission. What types of rules do we want to follow? So I'm going to open that up for discussion.
If I may, what type of rules are in place with the council? Because I know I'm familiar with Mason rules that I use at the State House. Yep. You know, which identifies on procedures for committees and what you can do on motions. But there must be something in writing that the council uses.
There is, and basically what it says, and we had a brief discussion about this at our last meeting. I'll get to you in a moment, Steve. Basically, in the charter, the council makes its own rules. So the council has no formal, entirely documented set of rules. And you'll find that on a number of boards and committees in town. One of the principal things that we need to focus on is that on those boards and committees, there's always elected officials, who do turnovers to the new guys coming on board, the new people coming on board, and it works itself out through that process of being educated when you're the new person to join. The planning board has some formal rules for procedure. The zoning board has some adopted rules. They've recently just gone through a process of modifying theirs. Steve could answer if we have a specific set of formal rules on the school board side. Other than that, I think the real concern here is that we're behaving in a civil manner, that we're following some rule. The chairman generally is the person who's responsible for making sure that we do that. When, as we just saw, Al, you briefly raised your hand. I started to recognize you. You started talking. Steve was putting his hand up. So we need to look at that, because we're not all supposed to just jump in and start talking at once. There needs to be some recognition. of people wanting to talk. That includes recognition from the floor of people wanting to talk, and typically those in attendance in the meeting come up to the microphone, they can sit or stand, they give us their name and address so that we know who they are, recorded for the minutes, and then they address the commission. We don't engage in debates with people from the floor. We don't allow people on the floor to engage debates with each other. So it's a standard sort of decorum and method of following those that we need to look at. Steve?
Mr. Chairman, my intent was, actually you had a great demonstration of it right here. My intent was to make sure that the board was not conversational in nature, that we rely on the chair for recognition, that we ask permission to speak. Al asked permission and you recognized him, and I was giving you a signal and you noted, and a head nod would have been fine, and then I would have known that you had me on the list and I would have been next. Also, we find on the school board we do this, and we don't, we wait for the chairman, whoever it may be, to recognize us. At least we make every attempt to. And also the vice chairman has a responsibility on that, as the chairman often can be focused on what's coming up next on the agenda, what they're working on, documentation. So if the vice chairman can swivel their head and just recognize and indicate to the chairman, hey, just a quick touch, and so-and-so looks like they wanted to be recognized. That way the chairman keeps a list, and it makes for a quicker meeting, and we get it done efficiently, and the will of the people gets taken care of.
Thank you. Anyone else? Chris?
Since this is the first board that I've ever sat on, I mean, I'd certainly like a less formal, route, anything that keeps civil and keeps things moving along. I mean, that's fine with me.
Okay.
I don't know what the rules are to Robert's rules that, they've brought up, but I mean, like you said, it would be quite a task to try to understand them and then pursue what we have to do as a board.
Okay, anyone else?
Was there a motion made on that before, or was it tabled on the?
There was a motion made. I think that, if I can speak to Steve's intent of that, as he stated at that meeting, it was to drive the discussion so that we talk about how we're going to conduct ourselves. And what Steve just relayed is really the central point to how meetings have to be run, and we all have to keep that as our focus. We're not up here talking over each other, right? So that we're not jumping in to try to get attention, and we don't devolve into an argument as we do discuss. We're expected to discuss. We're expected to debate. When we get to that point of our meetings, which will not come so much tonight, but in a future point when we're ready to start looking at the course of action we're going to take, and the reports that we have to create and draft up, and all of that stuff. We're expected to have that type of level of discussion. I think it's appropriate, too, to remind everybody that we are subject to 91A, state laws governing meetings. All of our meetings, I do not foresee the need to have a non-public meeting. We do not have any remainder of legal type advices where we would go behind a closed session or anything for that kind of meeting. This is not typically that type of board which would routinely even consider such a thing. We don't have any non-meetings, which is a meeting that takes place for legal purposes specifically. So there's not that. Our email communications, just for some of you who have not served on a board before, email communications of the board are subject to a right-to-know law. You might have noticed when I sent out the agenda, I put a little note there that it wasn't to drive any kind of discussion in response to the agenda. It was simply to communicate the agenda. So it's not expected that we would get an email like that and suddenly start exchanging emails. We don't have off-board discussions where we have a quorum of individuals gathering to talk about what they want to do versus what somebody else up here might want to do. Everything is really supposed to be in public, above board, and that's the way I think we best serve our community. Marty?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the fundamental basis that you've already discussed for a meeting is more than appropriate, I think, for us. And as Steve indicated, that, you know, we keep it civil. Obviously, Chris, we make sure everybody has the appropriate time, but ultimately, the chairman is going to run the meeting. And unless there is an objection made by the committee, someone on the committee, and then if it's needed to override a decision that the chairman may make, other than that, I think that the chairman should just go ahead and run the meeting. Most of us have experience, a lot of us have experience, let me put it that way, from either town council, school, state representative, whatever, that I think we pretty well know how it goes. And, you know, if there's a problem, we certainly will ask you for a ruling or make a comment. So if you'd like to go that way, I think we should go that way, that you run the meeting as you've described you were going to run, fair, open.
I think that's preferable to me. I think it's the right way to go. I'd like the fact that you brought up that if I do something that one or more people do not agree with, the action I've taken to either close off or limit discussion, or I'm doing the wrong kind of thing up here, that you do make the motion to overrule the chairman. And that puts whatever I did up to a vote of everybody, and you overrule the chairman, right? And I've often thought that that's most particularly useful in keeping discussion from being cut off too quickly. Al?
Yeah, I would, to move this on, yeah, I'd like to make a motion then what you basically common sense 101 for rules, and with an emphasis on civility amongst all. And that way we can move on and, I mean,
I think we can deal with that just as a matter of consent. If nobody else has any other issues or topics to bring up on this point, we'll just move on, that we've all come to a consensus agreement, and we'll go to the next piece of business, which is I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So motioned?
second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, notify me by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? No one's opposed? So, we are in public hearing. Public hearing tonight is specifically established to gather citizens' input on the community's desire as far as the commission's charge as approved at the 2010 town meeting. That charge was, shall a charter commission be established for the sole purpose of establishing official ballot voting under Londonderry's current town council, budgetary town meeting form of government? Do I have any members of the public who'd like to come forward and discuss their opinions? Please come up to the microphone, state your name for the record and address, please.
Pauline Perry, 369 Mammoth Road. Before anyone else from the public speaks, I think someone from your panel should explain to us how the town government will change. Meaning, we will no longer have a town meeting. What is going to happen to the budgetary process? Is the budget committee still involved? So that way we can have better questions for you.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Thank you.
I can quickly explain it, and of course, some of the question that you may be asking will be items for discussion as we move forward as to exactly how things would be implemented. But there are, if nobody minds, I'll take the question. There are specific things that will change should this commission decide to recommend to the council that they go forward with a charter change. That would appear on next March's Tuesday ballot. It doesn't require a specific percentage, just a simple majority change. And what the effect of that change would be, should the voters approve it, would be that it would do away with the town meeting that takes place on Saturday. It would, in one effect, replace it with a deliberative session that would be scheduled before that town meeting, very similar to the same schedule and time frame as you now see on the school board. The budget committee would still be an advisory budget committee just as they are now. The charter commission, as established under the specific caveat of the RSA and with the specific language in the article that was approved by the voters, has no authority to change those other parts of the charter having to deal with how we establish a budget, what the Budget Committee's role is. It just simply moves us into official ballot voting. So it's really kind of simple. The change that you would see would not take place until March of 2012. And that would be the first year that what you would see is the regular budget series of workshops, the same involvement of the Budget Committee. And then you'd see a deliberative session sometime in the early to mid part of February, similar to the same schedule the school board follows. And then at the deliberative session, there are certain rules that would apply to how things would be discussed. This commission can look at the establishment of a quorum or not establishing a quorum, as the case may be. And in the end, what we do is we prepare a final report that all goes into the documented charter change that's put to vote by the voters. And it's not vote on each little section, it's to vote on the totality of the change.
So would any parts of the charter present now be deleted?
There's a specific list, and we'll get to that in a future discussion. The town's attorney did provide a listing of the specific sections that we're able to address. Most of the addressing that we can do is a change in specific language and timetables of the meetings, because now there's a specific timetable set out for how we get to the budget. We have to adopt it by a certain date before town meeting. There's a lot of timetable type information spelled out in our charter, which we would have to come up with basically a companion set of replacement paragraphs. There are, to the best of my knowledge at this time, no section that would be deleted. There's no sections that would be deleted, except that section that says there will be a budgetary town meeting. And again, nothing would happen unless the voters approved it. This commission will not do anything other than forward a recommendation.
Brian, the sections that are going to change, or that could change, possibly change, would be that section 5.3 in the charter and 5.4, right?
They're in
no
there.
date
I don't
change.
have the specific list, but there's a list of, under those sections, there's specific paragraphs. Yeah.
Yeah, 5.3 and 5.4.
Can I ask another question?
Yes?
Unless somebody else has a question to ask, and I'll
public
let
hearing,
them
go
come
ahead.
forward. With reference to the decision on a quorum, is that made by this commission, or is it made after it's approved, if it is approved?
It can be done, to my knowledge, two different ways. We could make a recommendation that would be in the charter revision that's put in front of the voters, and even after that, somebody else could come back and look to change that. So we could go forward and just to speak to, we've heard one idea up here that we should have no quorum. That was made during the campaign. We've heard another idea from people who ran for this office that we should have a quorum. We also need to be mindful that we just witnessed a vote on the school district side of things regarding a quorum. So all of these things regarding quorum are part of a future discussion that we will have up here, and certainly during this public hearing, we're taking input on what those who are in attendance of the public hearing feel about having a quorum.
Okay, I'll address that when you get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. Any other members of the public have any questions? Comments? Public comment. Thank you.
Martin Surgis, 17 Wimbledon Drive. I've been all over the map on this. Initially, I was against SB2 because I'm probably one of the few people that do enjoy sometimes going to the town meetings. On the other hand, in the 10 years that I've been attending, we haven't gotten even close to 300 people to come to the town meetings. And I finally came down on the side of if we can get more people to vote on a third of the budget at the town. At the town meeting, we settled this last time, a $25 million budget, and only 250, no, was it 314? 318. 318 was, people were there, and that was it, and they decided on $25 million worth of budget items. And I guess it comes down, as much as, going to miss the town meeting and it's going to be fading out, At this point, the more people that can vote on budget issues, and so there's less griping going over the air, so to speak, and other forms that are out there, is the way I finally settled on it. Although I do question about the quorum. I'm concerned about that. Again, it's one of those balancing acts. If it's too low, then we can end up in the same deal that we ended up with the town meeting. You have a small group of people who, if they have a vested interest, they come there, they vote on their contract, and then they all disappear within 2 minutes of getting approval. On the other hand, if you make it too high, then people will be discouraged to go to deliberative session. So kind of on the fence on that, but at this point, I'm leaning toward doing the town ballot instead of the town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Al, I saw your hand up.
Yes, Martin?
Yeah.
I'd like to address something with you, if I may.
Sure.
Please, I want you to keep in mind there, the legislative intent on a deliberative session was set up basically like a town meeting. There's only a few towns in the whole state. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 that even have a quorum. The rest of them, there's no quorums, just so you understand that. The fading out part, this deliberative session was not designed to fade out the town meeting. It was designed to enhance it. It was designed because of today's people in a bedroom communities, especially in the southern area. Many are living in Massachusetts. So a lot of people are going to work and getting home 6, 7 o'clock at night. Their weekend is family time with kids, baseball games, and everything else. So a deliberative session is basically where you will go in and you can pretty much change anything you want, like a town meeting. But the change here will make a difference because the end result is the people will vote. Absentee ballot will vote. There will be no disenfranchising of voters, veterans that are overseas that will not have an opportunity to have their final say. So what you're saying, I just want to make sure for clarification. And to touch another thing on Pauline, there is a change because like the school side where we have 2 budgets. We have a default and then we have a budgetary. That will be added to the town side also, like the school side, if SB2 goes forward. Okay, but once again, the bottom line is the people will have the end result, in my opinion.
Can I just ask a quick question too?
Please.
Mr. Sturgis, can I just get your address, please, again?
17 Wimbledon Drive.
Wimbledon Drive. Thank you very much.
That's a good secretary. She's making sure she keeps track of these minutes. Which I think, I want to note that like for first time out of the gate, our minutes were out for review on time, and they were posted properly and on time. So that's pretty good because some of our more long-standing boards and committees don't equal that. We've made it a goal here to make sure that we stay on top of that part. Other members of the public? Comments, please? Please come to the microphone, state your name and address.
Jay Hooley, 25 Yellowstone Drive.
Only Yellowstone, right?
Only Yellowstone. Yes, it's on the mailbox.
You know how to get there, though.
Yes, we found it anyway. I just want to take 1 minute to speak in favor of an SB2 style of government. I think it is the right way to go. It's my belief that the majority of voters in the town would prefer that. I know there are some folks that, don't feel differently, but I don't think you'd be sitting here if the majority of folks were against that type of change, because we simply would have voted not to have a charter commission, and that'd be the end of that, and things would stay as they are. I'll also say that I think you should, when you get to it, assuming that you go in that direction, strongly consider some type of quorum, only because we do, and we see it at town meeting now, we restrict reconsideration. You don't want to end up with too small a number of people having too great an influence. What's the magic number? I don't know. High enough that you have a safeguard, low enough that you don't disenfranchise anybody. The school was looking at making it 350, but apparently the majority of voters who showed up were comfortable with the 500 number. Well, that might have changed. So if you decide to go that direction, I just think you should give that some thorough review.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone from the commission have any comments on that?
I would,
It's not to go into a long discussion on any
I just,
particular issue.
amongst
We're here to take-
ourselves here,
We're here to take public
Yeah.
comment. So do you have something?
yeah, would, the school, their budget is totally different than the town. I mean, when I go and vote on the town, on the school side, I think a little different than I do on the town side. That's why I'm saying, when they look at that quorum, I was wondering on what other people thought about that. That's gonna come up to give us some insight on that 500, why they went that route, because it's hard for us to sit here and try to contemplate, interpret what that vote was, which, you know, to me and many others weren't explained properly anyways under 350 quorum, what that meant.
I think that we should reserve that issue of quorum for a specific board-level discussion, and then we can all get our viewpoints on that. I think we should include in that a discussion on the recent vote on the school side of the ledger regarding the quorum. I think that that's a focused area that, should we get to the point where we decide we want to go forward with a recommendation to change to SB2, then we would include a more lengthy discussion at that. At this point, I think my own opinion is we're too early for that. Anyone have any thoughts towards that? I don't see anything. Okay. Additional members of the public, more comments, please?
Good evening. John Curran, 6 Fay Lane. I would echo my support for SB2 if you're taking public comments on that. I think it's bittersweet and ironic that I'm here in support of SB2. Bittersweet because I'm a history buff. I was a history major in college, and I hate to see the town meeting, which is kind of a vestige of our agrarian lifestyle, go by the wayside. But I think towns of this size across the state have been moving in that direction for years now. It's ironic, too, because our town is at a crossroads, whether we're going to go a headlong rush into development or we're going to try and restrain some growth. So, I mean, this is part and parcel of that. I did some research on New Hampshire Public Radio and read all the commentary on SB2 that's posted on there. There was a woman who posted, and I'd like to just quote, she says, I see SB2 as a win-win situation for all the taxpayers. Town meeting and the school meeting can run on for hours, and by the final vote, they've lost half the audience. It's not fair to the seniors, those with children, or those who can't just sit there in the bleachers hour after hour. I'd like to see the town and school meeting, or the deliberative sessions as they will be called, televised and available through our cable TV. Then the vote will take place 30 days thereafter, giving all of us a sufficient amount of time to study all the articles and make good decisions in the privacy of the ballot booth. It will also give those who cannot get to the polls the ability to have an absentee ballot and vote on every issue. I'll point out that I went to the town meeting, and the majority of at least the seriously contested issues all went to secret vote. So it's no different in my mind than what you do in the ballot box. Also, one of the considerations that I'd ask you as the commission to consider is that it reminded me of the petition that Al put forward, and I'm not getting into the merits, agree or disagree. One of the considerations the town council had was the cost, whether having a second balloting process, the taxpayers have to bear that. And I'd like to question whether it would be more cost-effective to put the things that are voted on at town meeting onto the ballot. If the ballot's already being produced, we're adding a couple line item things there, as opposed to having to pay employees to sit there for the entire day and check in voters. I think ultimately we're looking at approximately 3,000 voters who voted in the last town election versus 300 approximately who voted at town meeting. I'm always in favor of giving the franchise to as many people as possible. I think people have less ability to gripe if they have the opportunity to come and vote, and if more people vote, certainly that we're recognizing their ability to weigh in on their tax dollars. I don't agree that the majority always gets it right, but I think that's the system, and that's how we ought to strive to give everybody a voice in government if possible. And I think that, unfortunately, the town meeting has a shelf life that is probably coming to an end in a town of this size. So I would support SB2. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other comments up here? Other members of the public, please come forward. Are you reserving yourself for last?
Of course he is.
Need I even ask?
Thank you. Tom Frieda, 30 Buckingham Drive. I too would urge the commission to look towards adopting SB2 or some version of that. I think the votes at the last election made it clear that that's what the majority of the people, the vast majority of people want. Surprisingly, if you look at the people that voted against having a charter commission, and presumably were in favor of town meeting, 1,074 voted to do that, but only 300 showed up at the town meeting. Kind of I can't figure out the logic in that. I want to preserve town meeting, but I don't want to go. The second reason I think we should have moved towards SB2 is that if you look at the budgetary items that are voted on at Saturday meeting, it represents, less than 10% of the money that the town side deals with. So a vast majority of people are not voting on almost 90% of what the town side pays, what they pay in taxes. So I just don't see the logic in continuing this system anymore. The adherents of this system point out that, it's a check on the town council and taxes. Well, just go back and look at it. It's been very little of a check. The last meeting, you basically zeroed out the increase that you gave to the employees of the town, made that even. Prior years, the most you've done is 1%. I mean, I don't see it as a really valid check, and I don't see it worth the cost of disenfranchising, on average, about 50 or 60 people every year. So I would be in favor of SB2. Thank you.
Tom. Comments from the commission? Other members of the public? It kind of looks that way, except I think Pauline's going to jump you and come after you, maybe. Oh, okay. See, I try to predict these things. So please come up.
I didn't get served coffee being on the charter commission.
Last man in the room is supposed to bring it, and he didn't do it.
Reed Page, Clark, 79 Stonehenge Road. How do I start it this time? I've talked to several boards and several groups of people about how I believe anything that does not include people discussing with each other it is not the right thing to do. Going into a booth and spending 5 minutes making check marks when you have not heard when you may not have heard both sides of the issue. One gentleman says that 318 people, most people wanted to do a secret ballot. Well, that may be true, but they did a secret ballot after hearing both sides of the issue. I'm not sure that even with 3,000 people, and remember there are 24,000 possible registered voters in town, and even when 3,000 come, it would appear that they have, maybe they did, I mean, a certain amount certainly did. There's a difference in whether you're in a closed room and listening to two sides of a story, of a proposition, rather than when you read the press or don't read anything and then go and just for 5 minutes put an X in, not really knowing whether any other side was even thought about. And that X that you're putting in is only what 5 people think. The 5 counselors or the 5 school board members. It's true that school board has deliberative session with 500 people, where 500 people should show. I don't believe in that at all, but apparently I was outvoted by a few votes, so it's still important to remember that even last week, or whenever the town meeting was, $142,000 was taken out of the 25 million, I believe it was. And it's true, 25,000 of that was done by one of the counselors, but that still left 117,000. After considerable thought and hearing both sides of the issue, we're paying $117,000 less. I think the other thing that you have to consider, and I can come back again if you get bored with this the first time, the other thing you have to consider is that 2 states, used to be 3, but 2 states have done this type of meeting all the time. And it wasn't until fairly recently that SB2 even was thought about. And just think, if you're doing it SB2 and everything is done by voting, you are not, a lot of you are not doing anything but assuming that 3 out of the 5 members of the boards were correct, and so you went with them. I think that is very necessary for people to come and express their views in a town meeting. I don't care whether there's 300 or 3,000 there. And when I was not that much younger, there were 2,000 people there at both meetings. And when my great-grandfather was alive, there wasn't a school board meeting, it was just a school board superintendent. So it's true, times change, but I believe that the people that come to New Hampshire should try to put their toes in the water and test the water before they throw out a system that has worked for 300 years. It's very important to know that we've existed, 300 years, whatever it is, and still are alive and kicking. And the problem is that we should be, well, I can't say that because I don't know what people have to do. I took 5 kids. I had 5 kids. I was at that time much younger, and I went to all the baseball games, football games, and things. And yet I voted here because in Washington you couldn't vote at that time. You could only vote for the President of the United States. So I got the Daily News and read it up and made my decision based on that and conversations I had during the year with people here. But it's still important that more people that give their independent thought the more people will, the better the government will be. 3 out of 5 is good. I mean, you know, at least 3 out of 5 people agreed with whatever you're voting on, but it's not, you've got to have your own mind. You might have something entirely different that would be better for you. That's my first volley. There will be another one open where I'll have more than one person.
Should we decide to schedule another public hearing, which I myself, as one member up here, I'm in favor of having more than one public hearing.
Oh, okay.
So, but that's a consensus decision that we have to get everybody else up here to agree with.
Okay, so I shall return.
Thank you, Reed. Pauline? I predicted this.
Freedom.
You know, when you saw me, that I would ask questions, right?
Yes, I did.
Pauline Karen, 369 Mammoth Road. One question I have is, do you know how many towns have adopted the SB2? And are they still in SB2?
I just happen to have
Or did they change back to their former government?
I just happen to have some of that data that I pulled off the computer. For your information, SB2 started in 1995, or initiated, passed in 1995. Then it came in 1996 was where the first time it was put in place. Under SB2, under 1996, 30 towns went. In 97, 8 more. Then in 98, 6 more. Then in 99, 4 more. There was none in 2000, 2 in 2001, 1 in 02, 1 in 03, 2 in 04, 4 towns in 05, 1 in 06, 4 in 07, 2 in 08, and there was still question about 09. They didn't put the data down. But as of this report, which was February 17, I believe, 2009, there were a total of 65 SB2 towns. Now, out of all them 65, when they had voted, there was 3 other towns that voted it down, that did not want it. Okay, that failed. Now, there was another 5, 8, there's, I think, another 10 or 15 towns that tried to get rid of it after they already had it, and that failed, just to give you an idea on the vote status of the SB2. And I have a breakdown, basically. If I can get copies, I can give you all on all the towns that have it and who try to, deny it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. There is a statute on return to former form of government, and that's RSA 49B12, and it's just a matter of putting the question on the ballot for the voters. It doesn't have to have any formal signatures to have, the question put on the ballot. But I just wanted to know if there were towns that passed it that were sorry they did it, and why. That might be something for this commission to check on, because this is something that I think we should look at. Before we jump into something, we should know what all the answers are. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline.
If I can add to her real quick,
Yeah.
to help you out. Pauline, what I did too, was basic, and you can pretty much do the same thing at home, and I'm sure many of us are already doing it. If you do a Google search and you type SB2 in New Hampshire, you'll be surprised the data that comes up. There's articles throughout the whole state, and that's what I'm sure many of us have already done here, the state. And you could pretty much do the same thing to get an idea too.
I'd like to add just a little bit to that, too. That's the data that Al gave, I think, is specific on towns. There's also a number of school boards, school districts. That factors into it as well. The statistical counts are there, and what's collected in a lot of the reports that have actually been collected and generated is not so much the reason why they tried to revert back and the analysis of why that effort failed. A lot of that data is not there. It could be collected through like additional research. I mean, we could go down to Pelham, for instance. Pelham this March turned down an attempt to revert back to the former form of government, which was getting rid of SB2 and going backwards. So that kind of information is out there. I think if we found it, it would be in the realm of a person's particular opinion who was either an advocate for or against, and maybe not get really into what would be a more analytical reason. So I would proceed cautiously towards looking at the analytical reasons of why they did or why they didn't, or why they failed or why they succeeded. Because I think a lot of that data is not collected in the various reports that I've read. And then also, I think that individually, we might all each individually interpret that data. And since it's not being presented in an analytical way, but rather gathered through a research of editorials and articles in newspapers, I'd really hesitate to put a lot of stock in some of what we might find if we went down that path. That's my opinion. Other members of the public, it's a small group of people. We allotted until 8:30 p.m. for this discussion, for public hearing. If anybody wants to come up and restate or emphasize a particular thing, maybe in response to somebody else's comment that they've heard, not to engage in a debate with that person, but if anybody has any additional comments they'd like to offer the commission at this time, it would be appreciated. If no one feels like coming forward, we'll close the public hearing here in a few minutes and move on to the next agenda topic. Any additional conversations? Comments? Things you'd like us to consider? Going once? This would be a good time for you, Dale, if you have any particular questions about what you've seen in the public hearing. No, that's okay. I mean, I think what you see here is kind of good because this really is focused on one topic. You come to some council meetings or school board meetings and it's focused on a myriad of different topics and it's a lot more to absorb. You picked the good one. Anyone else? Any comments on the public hearing from the commission before we close public hearing? All right. I have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Have a second? Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor of closing public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Next agenda topic is Charter Commission discussion. We have 3 things to discuss. First up is a schedule of meetings, followed by approval of minutes, and then an other business topic to allow anybody to float anything else that they would like to say before we actually end up with a motion to adjourn. So we're ahead of schedule. First up is schedule of meetings. Mr. Young.
I'd like to make a recommendation that in one of the future meetings, we schedule to have the Assistant Town Manager, Sue Hickey, and the School District Business Manager, Peter Curro, attend and present to the board an understanding of what a default budget is, so that we can understand what that would mean, since the decision here is solely on a budgetary town meeting form of government versus voting on the budget at the polls. We would be taking into account whether we would be selecting 2 items, and one of those would be the default budget. And I think it would be good to understand what makes up a default budget and how it can be how it can be used, modified, or not modified.
I think that that's an excellent discussion point to have. Looking ahead, I think that that's probably a crucial point for us to cover in our report, so that our report has the full benefit of documenting what's to be expected. And I think that as the attorney explained to us, it's anticipated that our report would cover such things as a schedule for when the deliberative sessions and all those types of things would happen, because that actually has to be then worked into the charter change, should we go forward in that direction. So I think that's a great idea, Steve. I'll take that as a note. Marty?
As part of trying to be clear about what's going on and the impact that this has, I think at some point, a discussion, maybe at the same point with both Peter and Sue here, we could be asking the question, how would this impact petition motions or special warrants that are put out in regards to asking for road bonds or additional funds for any other thing that's out there, anything that has a financial potential obligation, because people will have to understand whether they're still going to be voted on separately, or are they going to be voted on as one lump sum, because obviously it will affect the bottom line, what the taxes are going to be. So I think we should have that discussion in regards to people understanding whether that'll still go forward, or how will it go forward, what impact it'll have.
Okay, I think the ideal person for that is probably David, town manager, to come in and give us an overview of that.
Well, I think then if we're going to have Dave, we need Nate too, because we need both reasonings as to why decisions are made, what the defaults are, what a default means, which is contracts. I mean, we need a list so people understand what a default budget is and what a, what do you guys call it? Your approved budget? Is that the term you use for the school board? So people are only going to get a choice to vote on two things, period. An approved budget or a default budget. And I think people need to understand what the default budget means. And it might not mean a 2% increase. It could mean a 7% increase because of contractual and all that other stuff. So I think it's very important that if we're going to adopt what the school's doing, we need to hear how it works so that everybody can understand now what that means.
Okay, I agree. Al?
Yeah, I would also recommend, I mean, rather, even with the school or even the town side, David, why don't we bring somebody in and get it right from the horse's mouth, from the DRA, Department of Revenue, who works hand in hand and knows all the laws on this here. And that way we're getting, instead of hearsay how the school does it and how, because I question certain things on the school on stuff, I mean, I'm just saying on stuff that goes on, let's get somebody that's their job and they understand the law and have nothing to do with our town and can basically educate us on it. And maybe even somebody from the Secretary of State's office that puts this report together and puts that understands the analysis, and any questions on SB2 on other areas could answer that, where we may not be fully up on the laws, our town itself, on all areas, and we won't have to run to an attorney. You know, just my recommendation on that, and I'm sure we can get somebody from there.
Yep, I think we can look at that as well. And then, of course, one of the things we're going to have to do is work into a schedule of availability as to when we can have. So when we actually go a little further here and talk about what we all as a consensus feel our meeting schedule is going to look like, then we'll have from that outgrowth a couple of dates that we can go and propose as the date that we do these couple of topics and have a meeting focused solely on that and devote our time to it. Those would be public sessions, not necessarily public hearings, which means that if the discussion with the board and the subject matter experts we would invite goes long, that there might be limited opportunity for the public to ask questions at a meeting such as that. That would be the norm. So,
Steve had something he wanted to
Steve, you had something else over there. Thank you.
Good
You picked up on that.
watch. I was looking.
Making sure I'm remembering all this.
My intent, what Representative Baldessaro said has merit, and I'd agree with that. My intent by selecting Sue Hickey and Peter Curo was to have, because this is regarding the town and not the school, but we have a unique situation where we have historical data from the school side and somebody that's worked with it for the last 7 or 8 years. So having Peter to explain what it's like to live through it and how it works, along with Sue, who will have to to work with it should this board and the voters decide in the future, I thought made a lot of sense.
I think it does. I think another, another thing to add to that, too, is I think there is a specific legal definition of a default budget on the school district side of the equation. And while the council at times has talked about using a default budget sort of formula to look at that as a yardstick, it's not a technical definition, it's a definition that the council decided on its own. And if I remember right, I don't think they were one for one. I think they were very close, but I don't believe they were one for one. So I think that that is a worthwhile discussion. I think it's something that we would naturally include in a report going forward. And as we think about that, I want to remind everyone that we have a due date of a draft report of August the 26th, and then a due date of a final report on October 26th. And I also want to remind everybody that what that includes is both a majority and a minority report. So that if we don't reach a majority consensus, if we have a 5-4 or a 6-3 or whatever our final votes end up being, there is an opportunity for the minority vote to offer the minority report, the rebuttal report, for consideration. And that's the type of information that, of course, we heard, from public comment that you get to hear two sides of the story. That minority report constitutes the second side of the story. And I think it's very important that we go forward focused on the fact that we have that opportunity available to us, and should we decide to take advantage of it, that's what we ought to be doing. In the minority report, I think the decision to take advantage of it would not be a consensus for the entire Charter Commission. It would be the minority would decide that that's what they want to do. So, anybody else have any other thoughts on that? There are a couple other things that, as people were testifying, I took note of that we need to have additional discussions in future meetings, one of those being the issue of the quorum. I think that that's a focal area for a particular meeting. I'm not saying it's the only one. And then another one that was brought up was the cost issue of the meetings themselves, the deliberative session cost versus town meeting costs, how that would work with the overall cost of putting on the Tuesday vote. And we could probably look to, that might be Peter Currow on that side, as well as maybe either Meg or Susan Hickey on the town side. So there's a couple of different things there that we can look at as a topic.
Also, like Reed brought up about not having an opinion on both sides, you're not, with a vote, a ballot vote, you're just checking a box, you're not getting any kind of sides, both one way or the other. How does the deliberative session address that, being able to state your case for, whatever contract discussion might be going on that ballot? I
Well,
don't know.
It's covered. I mean, you have that date opportunity
In the deliberative session.
in the deliberative session.
Well,
and
how does
then,
the quorum number affect that discussion?
Same way.
That's, well,
It actually does affect it a lot, but the school board has always allowed people to speak, but technically if 500 people showed up, right, the way it is, you don't have to allow rebuttals and questions and all that stuff. So it is a very important,
and you have the wild card of the moderator rule on the deliberative session. So I think that's another topic that we want to have discussion on. I don't know that specific, like some of these, I don't think it's a specific decision point that we have to make, but it's an informational gathering thing that we need to take. So Chris, I'm gonna keep that down as a future topic as well, so that we have a discussion on that, all right? So from just this quick suggested list, I see the need for a few more meetings. I want to get the sense of the commission too, because I feel that we need to have at least one more additional public hearing prior to setting down to write our report, to give the public another opportunity, such as this one tonight, lightly attended as it is, the public another opportunity to come forward and give us their opinions. And then my own opinion is looking at, between the draft and final report, offering a public hearing between the draft and final. I think that might be, I'm speaking for myself, I just want to hear everybody else's thoughts on that.
I believe that we should have at least another public hearing, especially after the first draft, because up until then, we really haven't presented anything to the public in regards to where we're going.
Right.
And that'll give them an opportunity to look and see if we're doing our job, if they think we're doing our job, or if they think we've missed something and they want to add something else that we need to consider that we haven't considered. So, yeah, I'm totally in favor of that. Certainly, even if there's some other suggestions that I have in a public hearing, if they're sent to possibly the chairman and you feel that they should be brought before us without another public hearing, just because of the suggestion of it, I would think that would be appropriate also.
Okay, any other, Deb?
Thanks. I just want to echo some of what Marty said and take it one step further. I think now that the people have come up with some topics and we've come up with some topics and we're actually going to discuss them and people start seeing pros and cons and things like that, then you're going to get a little bit more interaction from the public. I don't think that the general public kind of knew what was going to go on here today. Other than to say, yes, I'm for it, and here's why, but they're not swaying us in any way, shape, or form, so it really wasn't, because this was just to get, I think, topics for us to discuss and kind of direct us on where to go, and that's what we're doing, and I think once we have a draft and have had some discussion, that's the public hearing that will actually be engaging and definitely direct us as if we're moving in the right direction or not.
And it does not limit us to just one additional. If you
Right.
feel that there's
Depending
two
on how it
more to
goes.
cover than we can cover in that one hearing, is certainly.
Okay, so I'm hearing an indication for certain of doing a public hearing between the draft and the final.
Definitely.
I actually think we should probably do one even before the draft, because there's a lot of topics here. Any one of those could take 2 or 3 hours, depending on the public input. So, I think we should, maybe report on some of these topics a little earlier on, maybe like July-ish, and maybe have one prior to the draft.
Okay. Reed, you have a comment you'd like to offer us?
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure it's going to be in favor of additional public hearings.
Absolutely. That's not the comment. I've been Reed Clark, 79 Stone Inn. I've been away a lot the past 4 weeks. Has there been a lot of discussion as to that there was going to be a meeting tonight? Or was I and these others, 5 people, the only persons that cared to come?
It was mentioned on the town's website. It was properly noticed. It was mentioned at the last meeting that there would be a meeting tonight. It was mentioned in the Dairy News as part of an article. It was mentioned in the Union Leader as part of an article that was going to be tonight. It was mentioned on at least one of the 2 town blogs. I don't know that it was mentioned on both, but I believe it was mentioned at every opportunity to communicate that it was communicated. Now, did we go to what I would call maybe extraordinary lengths, which would be individuals here emailing a lot of people and saying, hey, come out, come out, come out. I did not myself do that. I didn't see much of that going on, but Reed, the word went out. I look at the light attendance, and in one context I think, well, this is about normal for public hearings, depending on the topic. And in another context, I think about, okay, this charter commission is relatively new to the town, so people may not really be looking for it. And I'm also mindful of Paul's comments. People really kind of don't know what to expect. So if we could take these lists of meeting topic ideas and work that a little bit and finalize that out and communicate that out, maybe through, normally these agendas for, at least on the school board, or the council side, they have a meeting schedule of what's to be covered, or when the meetings are to occur, not necessarily what's to be covered. I think it might be beneficial to work that list, determine when the meetings, when we would have those. A couple of them, of course, we've got to look at availability of the staff that we want to support it, and DRA and Secretary of State persons, if we can get those invited and get them here. But I think it would be worthwhile to list those meetings in advance, well in advance, communicate that. Our various media outlets can pick up on that and maybe do a little bit more newsworthy type articles into, that these are the topics that will be covered in the future. So I think it's all about trying to get the word out there maybe a little bit better. But we did take every opportunity and properly post and notice the meeting. It's people pay.
You're talking to someone who
Pays attention.
That a web is something you find in the basement of my farmhouse, and
Yep.
you also, seriously, I never think of looking at that. I read the papers and listen to the news on TV, and that's, when I was a child, I didn't even have TV, just radio, so I think that this is, the fewer people that are here is because they didn't read enough in the web, the blog, whatever. They didn't read enough to realize that they should be here today. If people called me, they were coming, they didn't even know what date this was. And I'm sure that had to be somewhere, obviously, in the newspapers and stuff.
Thanks, Reed. And I did mention the Dairy News and Union Leader, and I'm about to catch it for not mentioning the Londonderry Times, so.
That's, yeah.
But it was also in the Londonderry Times. So just as a discussion topic for the commission, do we want to look at additional line of communication outside the norm? Anybody have any suggestions for that, what that might be? What we might look to do, either through a press release that we could develop to put this word out, either that or potentially sending a notice around to other boards and committees in town, what our meeting schedule is. Is there things like that
TV
that we
show.
think we should do, or I know we can do a lot. Should we do that much? And Steve, comments on that?
Just to make a point, there's more press than people here.
TV shows and other.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we could publish it on
Well, if
cable
you
station.
consider the blog people.
They have a calendar?
I think people we just didn't know what it was gonna be. Now that they know.
You need to
Whose dog is
speak up.
somebody's dog? Whose dog?
Thanks, Reed. Marty?
Yeah, unless you want to talk, I think
No,
what I
you
was going
can
to
say
say.
what I was gonna say, it's fine.
I think what you're going to say, because I was been thinking the same thing. I think maybe that some of the lack of turnout may be because some people are really waiting to see where we're going, what we're going to be doing, and what we're considering in regards to getting there. Now that we've had this meeting, I think it will create a little bit more of a buzz for people. The articles that are going to be written and so forth by the press should certainly stir up some people's interest and maybe some comments. And I think that it's like anything, Reed, unless somebody's really upset with where you're going, they're going to just go ahead and let you go. And maybe at the last minute, they might stop you. We've had that before. But, that may be the case here, too. People just want to see where we're going to go. And before we get to the point where there's no return, they may step in and say, well, did you consider this? Did you consider that? we've certainly experienced that enough times in meetings we've had, that people weren't paying attention. They've come in and they're asking questions that we've already taken care of. But that's the nature of the beast itself, you know, I mean, dealing with the public, not everybody's gonna hear about it, not everybody's gonna know everything about it to begin with, and they're gonna come in and they're gonna wanna talk more about things, so, that's one of the reasons we're having the public hearings, that's one of the reasons, I mean, the press is here, that's one of the greatest ways for us to get people interested. When they read about what's going on, it just may trigger them to be involved a little more.
Because just by saying there's a meeting on the charter to change the town, most people don't even understand the whole concept. I mean, most people don't even realize there's two types of government. I mean, the average, I mean, a lot of us know because we're in boards and committees and we're active, and most people just glaze over that. They just, you know, unless it directly affects them some way, shape, or form, they're not thinking about it. It's not front of mind. But
Chris?
once they see our topics, I think that might encourage them more.
Chris, you had your hand up?
No, I was just going to add to what Marty was saying. I think, you know, just the idea of having a public meeting before the draft and then after the draft, I think, you know, probably that'd be enough as far as like the public meetings that we would need. You know, just so people get an idea or flavor for what direction we're headed, you know, get final input before the draft, and then, you know, draw up the document, and get additional input from that. Makes sense to me.
Anyone else? No?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would think hopefully the next time before we go to a public meeting that we would already have the DRA or others in, because like when I go through this package here, I see no meat in here of SB2, the procedures or anything, what goes on with it, that explains how to do this. The next meeting, and that's a shame, I was up there this morning, I left it in my drawer. I had our legal system pull me all the laws, okay, under SB2. So these are things that people can come and explain. Then I would think to go public, so the residents are gonna be able to see this. You know what I mean, on our meetings here, and people explaining so they understand it. And then the opportunity on that public hearing, they're already gonna know also, if they're watching. And I believe more people do watch this, you know, what goes on here than said.
Okay. Anyone else?
Just a final comment. I think the publication of our minutes for this meeting, especially with the topic ideas that we have down, may just generate more interest from people. And I think that itself hopefully will get more people out for a public hearing. So I think what we need to do is decide on, as you said, maybe when we're going to do each one of these segments, and when we think the first public hearing, the next public hearing should be before the draft, and then let people know that we're going to have another one after the draft.
Deb?
One more thing, I just want to say it was a great idea that Al actually came up with by getting somebody who has no vested interest in whether the town goes one way or another, or has had a bias or prejudice on SB2. No disrespect to town people, but these people are coming in with, this is just the facts. I don't think they have a vested interest, so I think it's good that we're getting a third party other than the town and the school. I think that keeps it kind of middle of the road.
Yeah,
Because people can focus on a good point or a bad point, and it could sway you, or something could be left out.
I agree yet disagree. I think that the perspective offered by town staff and school district staff is valuable, and having worked with them in public sessions a number of different times and witnessed it on the school board side, they remain pretty objective in presenting facts. I also like the idea of augmenting it with somebody from DRA and Secretary of State's office, and I think that they offer an additional perspective that we may want to consider. So I don't want to like exclude one or the other.
I'm just saying, I like it that we're having a third party.
How feasible is it to get somebody down here to do that, though? I mean,
We'll-
there's people
we'll-
at our disposal, the state.
We'll work that out. And whatever is feasible, that's of course something that will drive when we would schedule that specific meeting. So we'll work out that's kind of the next topic level is meeting dates. Now, if you look at the town's calendar, there are a number of Monday nights available. We can have more than one meeting a month. There are a number of Thursday nights available. There are a number of nights of the week where this meeting room is available. So it gets really down to the discussion of how often does the commission want to meet? We have a number, we see that from these topic areas, I can tell you that if we were to try to cover all of these in one night, it's going to be a very, very long night. And the ability to keep our focus on a couple of topic areas might be better in a shorter meeting. So if we spread these out a little bit, you know, that would be,
I think we need to have, I mean, what do you say, August 26th?
yeah, our draft is due August
That's
26th.
like 3 months. I mean, there's
Yep.
a lot of stuff to talk about. If you want to bring in all these different people for meetings, which is fine, and then have discussion amongst the charter, you know, separately on, you know, how the whole thing is going to look. I mean, we could have everybody come in and talk about what's going on with how they're doing things and what the laws are, but we still need to form the charter with this group. So I think that we need more than, you know, just a handful of meetings. I mean, I think that we should probably, my opinion would be at least every other week until we've got something nailed down. Because if we take and we look at having the school come in and the state come in, and then, you know, have the town come in, and then if you look at, you know, any kind of vacations in between, I just think that August is gonna sneak up on us quickly. So,
Agree.
I think we should have more meetings than less, at least initially. I mean, if we're done by July 1st, great, and we can have our public meeting and be done, but I think it's gonna come quick.
Others? I want to hear it, hear from everybody.
I think she's right. I think it'll come quicker than you think, especially with the kind of stuff we need to discuss, because some of these are going to take a lot of discussion. You know, just the presentations by Peter, Susan, if they're available. You know, the comment.
Get it done quick with Sue.
Yeah, the question.
Yeah, we have to get it done quickly. This is true.
Delivery date is June, in June.
So we have to look at that as a.
He should be first then. Maybe in a couple of weeks.
So I think I'm hearing pretty much an agreement that we need to do more meetings, not less.
If twice a month is what we think that we need to do, I mean, that's fine too, you know.
Yeah.
And whatever the majority.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned, Chris, I think we have to take that into consideration, is that we can schedule a number of meetings. I think we have to accept that we're going to schedule meetings and that there are a certain number of us who may miss one or two of them between now and the 26th, certainly because we're coming into the summertime. There are planned vacations, and we just have to accept that that is a likely outcome, that there will be a couple of meetings missed. We need to make sure that we do what we can to keep that to an absolute minimum. And then when we get to a certain point where we are taking votes on the positions that we're going to take, we certainly would want to do that with the entire commission present for that, although we would do it with a quorum if that's all that was present. So I think everybody has to be aware that attendance is desired, certainly not mandatory, but everybody ran for this knowing we'd have some work to do, and we should all try to put every effort we can into being to every one of these meetings. If Lara has to be out, somebody else has to take notes, and so.
I nominate Chris.
That'll be a chair appointment, and I already know who's gonna do it.
Mr. Chairman, you know, one thing we haven't even discussed, and that is going to take a little bit of time, is what the report is going to look like, how it's going to be formatted, what we're going to say, you know, in regards to the actual presentation of what should be on the ballot and our recommendations and the backup reasons for why we're doing what we're doing. I mean, as we go through some of this stuff and we get information, we need to make sure we have that captured to be in the report, okay?
Yep.
So that people understand that when we make this change, we refer to the budget being default versus whatever, and we give that definition of what it is. We have it there, available to them, even if it's a glossary or something, that people will be able to look at the report and understand what we're talking about. So there'll be some.
We're just making an amendment to the charter, though, right?
What's that?
In the end, we're just making an amendment to the charter.
We're making a recommendation
Well, yeah, a recommendation of an amendment to the charter.
It's a report. I think that kind of comes back to kind of a question for the attorney again, that he can answer via email. Regarding the format and content of the report, it's my expectation that it's a full report with the draft language for the change. And then we make that report and to the council, and that goes forward. The draft language for the change is what goes forward for the, but we'll, or no change. Or no change. And it is a either or. There is a change or there is no change. And so we have to get to that. Any other thoughts or comments on that? Is everybody okay with Monday night meetings? I mean, Monday nights are what we have a lot of schedule time available. And of course, the summer, a lot of the committees start stretching out their scheduled efforts, and they have different nights that there are other nights on the calendar, but we need to look at what's best for the most.
I prefer Wednesday, but.
Planning board. Don't have to worry about planning boards.
They
on
meet two
Wednesday.
meetings. They meet the first two Wednesdays of every month and occasionally a third. And they have the
It'd have to
priority
be
over the meeting.
third.
Huh?
We'd always have to be the third or the fourth week of the month.
And we would get bumped if the planning board decided they needed a third meeting in any particular month.
Can we have this in any other room, this meeting? Is there another room available, like another conference room?
There's,
Not at this level of
not that
communication.
can hold nine of us and an audience, and that has a
So we might need
robust
school.
enough sound system to video broadcast
Does
it.
that still do it?
What about the school, don't they have a conference room back there? Is
Yeah.
that sufficient?
Yeah, I mean, you could still do it in there, I guess.
Yep.
I don't think they've ripped the system out.
So consensus for a particular meeting, Chris has expressed Wednesday would be a preferable night for him. Others?
I've got commitments on Wednesday, so I
And
couldn't do
Wednesday's a
Wednesdays.
session day for me where I can't guarantee that I get back here in time if we're,
I mean, if Monday works for everybody, I can
Monday's
work
perfect
my
for me,
schedule around it.
Okay.
It's not a big
How's it
deal.
out there late on Wednesday night?
Monday or even a Thursday if you needed to. Thursdays look pretty busy, too.
Yeah,
Thursdays,
Thursdays,
I'm
but,
out.
but the meetings that are on Thursdays don't typically occur in this room. But you got solid waste committee, town hall meeting, the town hall meeting's done, but leadership Londonderry doesn't typically meet in here. Old Home Day
Thursdays
Committee.
aren't available for me.
Okay. So what I'm hearing makes me
Somewhere
think that
until
Monday
after
night's where we're
August.
gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, there may be times when I'm just not gonna be able to make it.
All right. So I think I'm going to propose an approach, and if everybody agrees that that's okay, I'm going to take these topics, lay them out, communicate with the town manager on the availability of staff and with the school district superintendent, the availability of staff, and also let Dave coordinate DRA and Secretary of State information. Al, I know you'll probably make a couple of calls yourself on that. I'm expecting that you probably would, so if, what I'll do is I'll take a cut at putting together a robust agenda with meeting dates between now and, since we have to have the draft in on the 26th, we have to, I think, have at least a couple of meetings to talk about the draft. Maybe one of those is early on, where we talk about an outline, Marty, to your suggestion of what the report would actually contain. And then we have a meeting. August 23rd would be the meeting before the 26th, that we be our final opportunity to vote on a Monday night, before it's due on a Thursday, which is the 26th, for our draft. So that would, of course, be one of the meeting dates. And we have basically what looks like, from bouncing against the council schedule, is I'm going to say that our next meeting date opportunity would be the 26th of April, followed by the next meeting opportunity of the 10th of May and then the 24th of May. Those are our next three meeting Monday nights.
Could you repeat those again, please?
The 26th of April, then 2 weeks later on the 10th, and then 2 weeks later on the 24th. Those are our next 3 Monday night meeting opportunities. So I'll work towards taking these suggested topic areas, wrapping them into those dates, and lining up the resources with the town
These
manager.
would not be public
These would all be public sessions,
sessions, but not public hearings.
not public hearings.
Public comment, I think we would accept. I would not want to. That's just my personal, I mean, if there's people from the public coming to these meetings and we're talking in public session, I'd like to hear public comment.
Steve?
Yeah, for me, I mean, the only difference between a public hearing, an official public hearing, and one of our regular public meetings is a public hearing cost us money to publish and tell people that we're going to do it. So I see no reason why the public wouldn't be able to participate in every single meeting that we hold.
Okay. Other thoughts on that?
I'm all for that.
Okay. Yeah, I think we would use the standard kind of frame of reference we use for council meetings, and we would look at the agenda topics itself, make sure that we're able to cover the agenda topics, and make sure we're able to move through the entire agenda. And then, like tonight, we invited people to come up again and again if necessary. If we got to that kind of meeting where we had a lot of people, a lot of interest, we'd probably go to the limiting factor of each person come up and say one thing, and if you have something new, come up, and if you just want to say here to what that person said, then we'll work those meetings in that fashion and get through everything. But I always have a preference, and everybody knows that, for public comment and allowing it as much as possible. So Al, you had a comment?
Yes, I'm hoping that we would do our discussion, do a little backwards versus public comment in the beginning, do our discussion over the different issues, and then public comment at the end. I mean,
Yeah, I agree with
versus having public comment in the
Actually,
beginning.
I don't personally, I mean, I don't know how the rest of you guys feel, but I don't have a problem. I know, we want to keep it forms and regulations, but I think in a discussion period, if we want to get people involved, because there's obviously only a handful of people here, and if our goal is to try to get as many people involved as possible, I don't have a problem with public comment during the discussion. If we find that the room is overflowing, then we could have a real board discussion, then we move out, let the public talk, then we come back to the board. We could be really rigid and follow through, but if you got a handful of people in the room and somebody says something on the board and they raise their hand and they have a comment to something, I mean, if it gets to the point where we've got a lot of people participating, yes, then we need to follow the stringent rules of the board discusses first, we go out to the public, we come back, that kind of stuff. But I don't see any problem with any interaction during the discussion.
Yeah, I think when you look at that, too, into your comments, Kathy, to look at the agenda, I don't think it's necessary to schedule a specific period for public comment.
Right.
Just move right into what we have to talk about, and talk about it, and then follow that back and forth method of, presentation. And what we do is, typically in these meetings, you have a presentation from whoever our subject matter expert is. You have the commission ask questions and get the questions answered, and a level of discussion that takes place as part of that process. Then we open it up to the public. And the give and take of whatever occurs based on our desire to get through the agenda. I personally am one of those people who, we come to a meeting, we leave when it's done. I don't like, you notice I didn't put on here, we're done at 10 o'clock, hell or high water kind of thing. I
think people would get sick of us if we're still here at 10 o'clock.
I think you're right.
Look at their watches right now.
I know. But actually, if we were going till 10 o'clock, I would enjoy it, because that means obviously people care, so they're showing up, so.
Okay, so I'll do that. I'll draft out the dates. I'll send that out. What I'll do is I'll send that out via email. And what that is so that you could each individually then communicate back to me to make sure, and I'll try to coincide that. Laura and I will try to coincide that with the meeting minutes to go out. So we'll document that suggested list of dates, suggested list of topics for that. And then you can comment back individually so that we're not doing an email discussion. And then we'll set the agendas. But for now, our next meeting will be scheduled for April 26th. Marty?
Mr. Chairman, just taking an opportunity to look at the calendar ahead based on the way you chose openings. If we did like 2 a month, basically, We have 8 more meetings to August 9th. And the reason I'm saying August 9th is because we can't walk in here on August 23rd and expect that we have a preliminary report on August 26th.
Agreed.
So
You have
we
to have it
need,
done
we,
by the 9th. It's got to be pretty
yeah,
close
we
to
need
complete.
to, we already need to be having developed and starting that preliminary report
Agreed.
by the 9th. So you know, because I don't know who's going to put it together or how we're going to do that, but we need obviously some time just to
Secretary's
produce it.
job.
Just to produce it. It's just a comment I wanted to make. And why, like, as
So I hope you're half finished.
as you said, time is going to fly. August 26th is going to come quicker than you think.
Yes, it is. And I think, Marty, I think that's a great observation, that we need to make sure that we, you know, that's why I think one of the early topics, I took a note, that one of the early topics is report format.
Yep.
So we'll go back to Dave and to the town attorney if necessary.
I almost think we need the draft done on the 9th. So all we're doing is tweaking it, make sure we're almost comfortable with it. So when we come back on the 23rd, everybody's got their final.
The 23rd,
Insert,
yeah,
right.
the 23rd, we should be ready to say, yeah, let's get this issued
I'm saying
for
the
the
9th, that
26th.
will give us, if we know pretty much that the draft is completed on the 9th.
Yep.
Everybody's pretty comfortable with their final concerns on the 23rd, which gives us that whole evening to hash them out, if there are any, you know what I'm saying? But we need that, I personally feel we need to have the draft done on the 9th, so we have that one last ability to hash it out. I mean, I would set the goal date, not the 23rd, the 9th, because having an A personality, that always used to sit up till midnight the night before a report is done. I don't think we want to be doing that, something like that. You know, I mean, I don't want to wait till the 23rd to come up with the draft. and
Exactly.
Yep.
Be sitting here until 2 o'clock in the morning fighting over everything. so.
No, I don't think we need to do that either. So let's put that down then, just future date out as August 9th, is that we work that into the schedule of activities so that we have our draft due on the 9th. And then
For
we-
us.
For us.
Finalize it.
And-
And finalize it on the 23rd.
Yeah, that we have it available and done, we've done it, we've got it out here. There may be a couple things that we don't resolve on the 9th. Further reading might involve a couple people coming up with a couple more things they want to talk about. And then we wrap those up on the
Plus,
23rd.
if we realize we're at such odds on the 9th, that gives us the ability to schedule the amount of meetings we need between the 9th and the 23rd. You know, if we have to have 5 meetings because we're all so at such odds, then so be it. But if we don't give ourselves the time to do that, we're gonna, I mean, we come in on wait till the 23rd, and then we find out half of us don't like one thing, and more of us like another thing, and we're all, so, I mean, we need that time frame to be able to, if we need extra meetings to hash things out. Hopefully we won't, but we should give ourselves a timeline to do that.
So let's talk about the draft on a little bit different context. The 26th is the date that the draft is due.
Right.
Now, we also have then until October
Finalize.
for a final. So there may be items in the draft that will remain for further discussion. I want everybody to kind of think about that. We may have a couple of areas where we think we need to do a little bit more and maybe bring in another subject matter expert. And the other thing we talked about already was the potential of having a public hearing between the draft and the final. And that may also then necessitate readdressing a particular section. Maybe not completely revamping it, but maybe it's amplifying it a little better, that sort of thing. So I want everybody to think about that. So the draft that's due on the 26th is not the be-all and end-all. Okay, so we'll get those dates out, and we'll coincide that with the minutes. Lara and I will coordinate that, and then everybody can give comments back on those if they have any suggestions, and we'll crank that out into what we do for a formal release of those dates. Anything else on schedule of meetings?
Brian, when you talk to Dave or the lawyer, wouldn't the draft also constitute, come up with some type of sample chart of the way that we would want to be able to submit for the voters?
That's what I'm going to ask him as
Is that-
part of the preliminary discussion we'll have on what the report will contain. Will it contain this, is it necessary that it contain, and I think I'm hearing that we all sort of lean that way, that it contain the language, if the decision is we're going forward with a recommendation to change, that it would contain the specific language changes.
And just a follow-up, if I may, because it makes sense for us to do that way, so we don't have to come back another year and cost the taxpayers, you know what I mean, another, or any type of special right, or anything, to get this in, we do it right the first time.
We
with
have
the
to wrap,
charter.
we have to wrap our job up.
And done, right, but I'm
by
saying, we don't have
our-
to go
our-
back and do changes
The
later.
Charter Commission itself, as an entity, our job is done on
How-
October
if-
26th.
if
especially
we,
the final
what-
report.
just so you, if we, whatever we come up with and we put in front of the voters,
Right.
that's it. If they don't like what we've come up with and it gets voted in, then they have to do a charter commission all over
Let
again.
me rephrase what I just said. So when we're done,
Yep.
that we don't have to pay more money for another to come forward and do this all over again, to make
That's up to
changes.
the town
We
people.
do it all at once, so another charter don't have to come forward the following year and do it, you know what I'm saying?
I understand
You
what you're
understand where I'm going with
saying.
this?
Yeah, I understand what you're
Not
saying.
us, but another charter being elected to put a charter and make corrective.
Well,
you know.
but the potential is there for that to happen if they don't like what we did or if they want to change something else, so.
If they don't like what we do,
They can petition,
then they have the opportunity to vote no.
right?
Right.
They have the opportunity, if the yes votes win, no matter what it is we do, they have the opportunity to convince the council to place it on again, or to do the
Open the
petitioning,
charter up
to do the
completely.
petitioning process. The other thing is, remember that they also, you can change the charter through a minor textual changes through other means. Like a few years ago, we changed that part of the charter dealing with how the capital planning process works. We actually reformed that process a little bit. Marty, you might remember that. It happened when you were on. And because that was not considered a substantive change to the intent of the charter, that was put on by the council itself with the language contained. So there are minor textual changes and clarification changes that can be put on by the council at any time. The rest of it has to follow the petitioning process, or it's a major change which results in the establishment of a charter commission.
Do you want to get a lesson on that again, Al, a legal opinion on what your concern is
What's that?
about the charter?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, I think we're good there.
That was a simple question.
Okay,
So,
Do things right the first time, so we don't come back and do it again.
that is
Always-
correct. Very good. You learned that.
okay, any other topic, any other discussion on the topic of schedule? Next item up is approval of minutes.
I don't have any changes. Okay.
I second.
We have a motion to approve, we have a second.
I saw one minor change that I wanted to make.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve, right? We have a second. Any discussion? Chris?
I had one minor correction is all. Can I do that now?
Yeah.
In the second page of the, did anybody print this out?
Yep, I have.
Yeah, let me here. Just in this paragraph right here. Oh, yeah, you got that already.
Yeah, I noticed a couple of just grammatical errors that I did it by myself, and Chris concurred with me that I'm going to change.
So the changes have already been amended, is what you're saying, in the minutes?
She just marked it out there.
Yes, I marked it that I'm going to change it.
Okay.
What's the change?
So then what's the change? Just
It's on page 2 of the draft. It's a paragraph that states, Chris Paul asks if you want more meetings, are they coordinated? So it just, I'm going to take out the do and have the sentence read, Chris Paul asks if you want more hearings, how are they coordinated, with a question mark. That's it.
And we took that as a topic item for tonight and addressed it, so is everybody comfortable with that minor textual change?
I wasn't here, so
You're going to be abstaining from
I'm
this?
staying.
Okay.
That's fine.
Anything else?
Was that the only one you found, Larry?
Reed, is your hand actually up, or are you just holding your pen?
No, this is-
So let's try to be mindful. I saw you wave it a little bit, so,
Can't talk on the minutes anyways.
no. Anything else? Okay, motion's made and seconded. We have a textual change everybody's agreed to. All those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved.
I make a motion to adjourn.
There's
Is that
another
okay,
agenda
Lee?
item. There's another agenda item.
What is it?
Yeah, it's my trick way of making sure that we don't just jump out to adjournment.
Other
Does
business.
anybody have any other business they'd like to discuss of the Charter Commission's purposes?
I didn't think there was any other business tonight.
Seeing nothing, do I have a motion to adjourn, Kathy?
This way they can put in, no, this way everybody can put in, oh, her motion was denied.
Actually,
Get a kick out of Kathy Wagner's motion was denied. Make sure you get that in the press.
I voted.
okay, does anybody else want to make a motion to adjourn since we
Make a
denied
motion
Kathy's?
that we adjourn, and that Kathy to make no more motions.
So I have a motion to adjourn from Kathy. Do I have a second? I have a second from, I think Al beat you to it, so.
All right.
Motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned.
Kathy, anything I do to help.
You gonna do what I used to do?
Get me in trouble in church, you're gonna get me in trouble.
No way. No way.
Larry, do you need any amplification on minutes stuff? No, I took some notes throughout and
What?
thing.